There are things from which you should never emerge alive. Experiences that don't leave scars, they leave ruins. They shatter you from the inside out, transforming what remains of you into something unrecognizable. I survived the convent of Santa Agata. I saved 89 women. I buried 165. For 9 months in that cursed desert, I surrendered my body and mind to something that should not exist, not out of faith or courage, but because it was the only weapon I had left. 6 months later, I had a desk in Washington, a supervisor's badge, stacks of reports, endless meetings, budgets. They called it a promotion, my salary tripled, doors flew open, but I knew the truth. It was disguised punishment. Behind the scenes, Congressman Foster was pressuring the Bureau. His daughter Miranda had been missing for over 2 years, and I was the agent who couldn't find her. They needed a scapegoat, and since they couldn't fire me, I was already too famous by then. They hid me behind a desk, hoping that time would erase what Santa Agata had done to me. But time doesn't erase what continues to watch you. The nights remained long. Sleep never came. And when it did, it brought whispers, names I swore I'd forgotten: Agnes, Benedicta, and those anonymous crosses planted in the desert. I thought I was safe. I thought the price had been paid. I was wrong. My name is Special Agent Alina Rowe. And before I go on, I need you to do something for me. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching this from. City, country, anywhere. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just my story. It's a warning. And if enough people know, if enough witnesses exist, maybe, just maybe when this comes for you, someone will believe you when you scream for help. It all began on February 22nd, 2022. The date was a shattered mirror. Numbers repeating, folding in on themselves, too symmetrical to be mere happenstance. In the mountains of Tennessee, where fog swallows entire villages and superstition is a family tradition, that date meant something. In the small town of Ashford Hollow, the Marrow house had been the talk of the town weeks before the priest even arrived. Windows boarded up, curtains moving against the wind. Neighbors swore they heard prayers, not in English, not in Latin, but in something older. Something that made the skin crawl even from a distance. Calls to the police escalated every night. Always the same description. Lights pulsing behind the curtains. Sounds of wood being broken. And that breathing heavy, rhythmic, coming from inside the walls. When Father Elias Thorne parked his black sedan in front of the gate, the temperature had already dropped 15 degrees. The fog covered the streets, the gardens, the neighboring houses. Everything except that property. As if something inside refused to be hidden, the girl's parents waited on the sidewalk. The father, Marcus Marrow, had purple bags under his eyes that looked like bruises. His hands shook so much he could barely hold onto the rosary. The mother, Claire, whispered her daughter's name. Emily, Emily, as if it were a broken mantra, her eyes fixed on the front door, but not truly seeing anything. How long has she been in there? Father Thorne asked. Marcus swallowed hard. 9 days. And you haven't gone in? Claire finally diverted her gaze from the house. When her eyes met the priest's, there was more than fear. There was guilt. We tried, she whispered, but she asked us to stay out. And when my daughter asks for something, it's no longer my daughter speaking. Sounds came from within the house. They were not random. They were organized, methodical, wood groaning under pressure, metal vibrating at frequencies that made the teeth ache, and that breathing not from a person, but from something much larger trying to fit into a very small space. The shutters slammed, not from the wind. They banged to a rhythm, like a heartbeat, like a war drum, like a countdown. The smell coming from the property was unbearable. Mold mixed with rusted iron, flesh left in the sun, and beneath it all, something sweet and putrid that stuck to the throat and wouldn't go away even after swallowing. Father Thorne opened the trunk. The leather case was there, worn by time. Inside, holy water, crucifixes, the ritual romanum bound in dark red leather. His hands did not shake as he picked it up, but his breathing did, short, controlled, like someone preparing to plunge into icy water. As he approached the door, the temperature plummeted. His breath came out in white clouds. The sweat on his back froze under his cassock, and the wood of the porch creaked, not under his feet. but seconds before he stepped, as if the house knew where he was going. For a moment, through the slats of the shutters, he saw movement, not reflections, not shadows. Silhouettes formed by an absence of light. Figures moving with human gestures, but at angles no body should make. As if something were rehearsing how to be human, practicing, failing. And then, just as his hand touched the doorknob cold as metal in winter, he heard it. A child's laughter. Not joyful, recognizing, as if it had been waiting for him. The door opened on its own. No creaks. No resistance. It merely slid open, revealing a hallway that seemed longer than it should have been, darker than daylight allowed. Father Thorne stepped in. And the moment he crossed the threshold, the wind outside died. Completely. The leaves stopped falling. The birds stopped singing. Even the parents breathing, still on the sidewalk, seemed to hold. Everything froze, except the clock on the living room wall, visible through the ajar door. Its hands marked exactly 3:15 a.m., the time Emily Marrow had last been left alone, the time when everything began. And that's when the sound started. Not music, not words. A choir, low, guttural, multiple voices speaking simultaneously in impossible harmony. Voices coming from the walls, from the ceiling, from beneath the floorboards, voices that knew his name, and whispered welcomes. And from that moment on, the house never fell silent again. What happened in the following hours? There's no safe way to describe it. If I detailed every second, every horror witnessed, this video would be removed before it ever went live. But you need to understand the basics. Enough to know that what they found afterward was no accident. It wasn't madness. It was a consequence. Imagine a residence being consumed from the inside out. Not by common fire, but by something that burned the very air, dissolving the surrounding reality like acid on fabric. The walls, once solid, seemed to be sweating in invisible agony. Witnesses reported an impossible heat so intense that the glass in the windows melted at the edges, dripping like hot wax, yet at the same time, a dense, suffocating humidity, like being inside giant lungs that never stopped breathing. Steam rose from the walls, not water vapor, but something thicker, oilier, sticking to the skin and smelling of copper and sulfur, with a sweetness that churned the stomach. It was a scent of decay and power, an otherworldly fragrance that permeated every fiber of the atmosphere. And the screams. God, the screams. They didn't come from Emily. They didn't come from the priest. They came from the walls, from the ceiling, from beneath the floorboards. Multiple voices screaming simultaneously in languages no linguist could identify afterward. Some sounded like children, others like the elderly. Some didn't even seem human, but rather distorted echoes of ancestral suffering. It was a cacophony of despair, a hellish choir that seemed to tear at the very fabric of time and space. And beneath it all, the voice of Father Elias Thorne, firm, unyielding, reciting the ritual Romanum in flawless Latin, alternating between supplications and commands, his voice rising above the chaos like an anchor in a storm. I exorcise you, every unclean spirit. He was the only barrier, the sole flame of resistance against the darkness that engulfed everything. But each word that left his mouth was devouring. It didn't echo. It didn't resonate. It simply vanished into the air, swallowed before it could reach the walls, as if something was feeding on the prayers, chewing them up, savoring them, transforming faith into fuel for its own profane existence. The windows exploded inward, glass raining down in the room without cutting anything, merely floating in the dense air as if gravity had forgotten to work, each shard shimmering with a ghostly light before dissolving into the oily vapor. Objects moved on their own, not flying violently like the movies, but worse, moving with intention, with purpose. Kitchen knives slowly dragged across the walls, drawing symbols that bled even into the wood, dark lines pulsing with a malign energy. Chairs turned toward the door like a silent audience watching a macabre spectacle. The crucifix on the wall spun 180 degrees and stayed that way inverted, watching, a symbol of faith transformed into mockery. And the floor. The damned floor was breathing. Wood swelling and contracting in a steady rhythm, boards creaking not from weight, but from expansion. as if something very large was trying to emerge from below, a subterranean creature fighting to breach the surface, bringing with it the terror of an unfathomable abyss. The house was no longer a home. It was a living organism, pulsating with a life that was not its own, a prison of flesh and bone for the reality that was unraveling. Neighbors called the police 14 times that night. 14 desperate calls, all reporting the same thing. It was impossible to approach the house. Not out of fear, although terror was palpable in the air, but because of an impenetrable physical barrier. 3 police officers, robust and trained men, tried to cross the gate and were thrown back by an invisible force as if they had collided with a wall of solid air. One of them broke his arm on impact, the scream of pain muffled by the chaos emanating from the residents. Another described the experience as trying to walk through a wall of solid wind, an ethereal and impenetrable barrier that defied all logic. Emily's parents, Marcus and Claire, sat outside, kneeling on the damp sidewalk, praying the rosary until their fingers bled, the wooden beads stained with the red of their faith and despair. Their voices, once firm, were now hoarse whispers, lost in the whirlwind of screams coming from the house. For 9 hours, no one entered. For 9 hours, the house screamed, a symphony of horror that seemed to rip the very fabric of the night. And then, at 4:47 a.m., exactly 9 hours after Father Elias Thorne entered, everything stopped. Not gradually, not with one last gasp of agony, but all at once. Like a switch being flipped off, the cacophony of voices, the suffocating heat, the invisible pressure that kept everyone away. Everything simply vanished. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. It was a silence you could feel, that pressed on your ears from inside, making you forget how to breathe because even your own breathing felt wrong, an intruder in a void of dread. It felt as if the entire world was holding its breath, waiting in a terrifying pause before the next act. The front door opened by itself, no creaking, no resistance. It merely slid outward in a smooth, impossible motion, revealing the darkness within. And from the threshold oozed a liquid. Thick, dark. It was neither water nor blood. It was something in between, with the consistency of oil, yet translucent like tree sap, pulsating with a life of its own. It dripped slowly, forming a puddle that spread across the sidewalk, staining the concrete with a color that changed depending on the angle of the light, sometimes deep brown, sometimes vibrant purple, sometimes something that had no name, a color that seemed to absorb light itself. It was the first sign that what had happened inside was not over, just dormant. A pause, a breath, before horror manifested once again. At 11 a.m., when the sun finally burned away the morning fog, the police team entered. 6 men, all veterans, all armed, all with over a decade of service, used to the worst humanity could offer. But nothing prepared them for what lay within. Their radios erupted with interference the moment they crossed the threshold, static so loud that one of them yanked the equipment off his belt and tossed it away, the jarring sound cutting through the oppressive silence like a blade. The air inside the house was heavy, dense, laden with the residue of something ancient and malign, a presence that still hovered, watching. For 3 minutes, there was absolute silence on the radio. A silence that stretched, heavy and oppressive, before being brutally shattered. Then, screams. Not of pain, not of physical injuries, but of pure shock, of disbelief tearing at their throats.
My God. Don't touch him! This is impossible. Call paramedics. No, wait.
Call. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving only a high-pitched static that soon dissolved into the silence of the street. When they emerged, 2 minutes later, all 6 had changed. Their faces, once hardened by experience, were now as white as paper, devoid of color and life. Their eyes, empty and glazed, looked through things instead of at them, as if the sight of horror had burned away their ability to process reality. One of them, the youngest, dropped to his knees and vomited yellow bile onto the grass, his body trembling uncontrollably. Another started to laugh a shrill, broken laugh that continued even as tears streamed down his face, a hysterical and disturbing sound. The oldest, a sergeant with 23 years in the force, murmured disjointed prayers. Not the Our Father nor the Hail Mary. Something older, words in Latin he shouldn't know, spoken with a desperate urgency, as if trying to ward off a shadow only he could see. One of the officers, James Rucker, 34 years old, father of 3, was holding his cell phone with hands trembling so violently that he nearly dropped it when he tried to hand it to the approaching paramedic. "I recorded it," he whispered, his voice hoarse and barely audible, his eyes fixated on the ground, unable to make eye contact. "I shouldn't have recorded, but I needed proof. I needed someone to believe this is real." The video lasted 17 seconds. 17 seconds that were enough to traumatize everyone who saw it, implanting a seed of dread that would never be eradicated. The camera shook violently but still captured impossible to ignore details, images that embedded themselves in the retina and soul. The walls were pulsing. Not metaphorically, not an optical illusion. They were literally pulsing, expanding and contracting in a slow, organic rhythm, as if the entire house were a living organ, a heart beating with a profane life. And there were veins, or something resembling veins, running along the surface of the wall, dark, swollen, transporting something that glowed faintly with a greenish light, a bioluminescent fluid that seemed to be the very essence of corruption. In the center of the room, where the dining table should have been, were 2 figures, or what remained of them. The first was recognizable as Father Elias Thorne only by his clothing. His black cassock, now torn and soaked with that oily liquid that had seeped through the threshold, was fused to the house's structure, but his body, it was inside the wall. Not walled up, not trapped, fused, as if the wood and plaster had grown around him while he was still breathing, absorbing him, making him part of the very structure of the house. His arms were outstretched in an involuntary crucifixion, fingers buried in the wall up to the knuckles, as if he had tried to pull himself out and the house had pulled back, reclaiming him. His head hung forward, eyes wide open, fixed on an invisible point, mouth agape, as if about to utter a final prayer or a last scream. And he was smiling, a wide, unnatural smile that stretched his lips into a grimace of ecstasy or of unspeakable horror, a smile that did not belong to a man of God, but to something that had triumphed over him. It was the most disturbing image of all, the final proof that evil not only existed there, but had prevailed. Not a smile of peace. A wrong smile. Too wide, stretched beyond what facial muscles should allow. A grotesque distortion that seemed to tear the skin of Father Elias Thorne, revealing a profane joy that was not his own. It was the face of surrender, of complete possession, a silent testimony that the battle had been overwhelmingly lost. The second figure was not on the floor. Emily Marrow, 17 years old, floated half a meter above the ground, suspended in the dense, heavy air of the room. Upside down, her arms dangled limp, fingers brushing the floor without touching it, as if she were about to plunge into an invisible abyss. Her blonde hair fell like a curtain, partially revealing her face, framing an unsettling expression of serenity. But her legs, they were spread at an impossible angle, not a normal split bar beyond that. Her hips twisted in a position that would break bones in a normal human body, a contortion that defied anatomy and logic, as if something had positioned her that way. Manipulated, arranged like a broken doll, displayed for an invisible audience, and she did not move, neither swayed. She merely floated, perfectly still, defying gravity with an obscene tranquility, a monument to the horror that had consumed her. She looked directly at the camera and smiled, the same smile as the priest, wide, unnatural, a rift in the face of a teenage girl who should have been terrified, but now wore a chilling complacency. But her eyes were completely black, not dilated pupils, black, as if someone had painted over them with a light-absorbing ink instead of reflecting, empty holes that seemed to suck the very soul out of anyone who stared into them. There was no glimmer, no reflection, only an abyss of darkness that seemed to stretch into infinity. And then she spoke, or something through her spoke. The voice did not seem to come from her mouth. It came from everywhere at once. From the pulsing walls, from the groaning ceiling, from within the very camera that James Rucker held with trembling hands. It was not a girl's voice, it was not a man's voice. It was multiple voices speaking in perfect unison. Some deep, others shrill, some that didn't even sound human, but more like whispers from abyssal creatures, all pronouncing the same words with an impossible synchronicity, an orchestra of demonic voices. And what they said made the blood of all who heard it run cold, freezing in their veins like ice. The words resonated not just in their ears, but in the very essence of their beings. A promise of damnation that would extend far beyond that house, far beyond that night. Over 700 miles away in Washington, D.C., I was sinking in my office, an impersonal cubicle designed to stifle any trace of adrenaline. Dozens of budget and statistics folders piled on my desk, a mountain of bureaucracy I needed to analyze and transform into a detailed report for the director by the end of the day. The irony was palpable. From field agent, immersed in danger and uncertainty, I had become a slave to numbers, a supervisor seeing action only through others' reports. Then my phone buzzed, breaking the monotony of the air conditioning hum. The name on the screen made my stomach churn. Victor Hawley. My former boss, now the director of the FBI, a position he had earned through merit and competence, but in my mind it carried the weight of a choice. I pressed the button to answer the call without taking my eyes off the computer screen, where an expense spreadsheet flashed in shades of green and red. "Victor," I said tersely, my voice laden with a coldness I didn't bother to disguise. I knew all too well that he hadn't made any effort to keep me in the field, perhaps because he couldn't, or more likely, because he didn't want to. After all, fighting for me would cost him his promotion to director. After his transfer, we had spoken little, and the distance between us was more than geographical. "Rowe, good afternoon, how are you?" he asked, his tone more solemn than necessary, a formality that only emphasized the barrier between us. "Fine, and you?" I replied, emotionless, hoping the brevity of my response would get him straight to the point. "Good as well, Alina, I actually need you." "You've been recruited." The word, recruited, sounded like an order, not a request, and a chill of irritation ran down my spine. "Victor, first of all, I can't go back to the field, you know that very well. And second, I have no interest at all. Anything else? I have dozens of files to analyze and present to my boss by the end of the day." My voice was a wall impenetrable, built from months of frustration and disillusionment. "I'm afraid you don't have a choice, Alina. Open your email." The authority in his voice was unmistakable, and something in his tone made me hesitate. Against my will, I opened my inbox. There was an email from Victor with an attachment, a video. "Okay, what's in it?" I asked, curiosity beginning to erode my armor of indifference. "Click on the video." I did this, and the image appeared on the screen. What followed was a torrent of sensations. I felt nauseous, a knot in my stomach that made me recoil in my chair. It was disgusting, disturbing, a horrific scene that defied comprehension. Why the hell was I seeing this? Who was that girl? My God, the video showed a scene of an exorcism, but it was nothing like anything I'd ever seen. There was a rawness, a violence that went beyond the ritual, something profoundly wrong. And suddenly, the image of the girl, who until then had appeared possessed and contorted, turned upside down, her eyes, once vacant, fixed directly on the camera, on me. Her voice, once guttural and distorted, became clear, cold, and chillingly familiar. "Alina Rowe, credential 9721. I know what you did in the desert. I know what you felt. And I'm waiting for you." The camera fell. The video froze. And at that moment, a sepulchral silence filled my room, denser than the hum of the air conditioning. Everyone present, Victor on the other end of the line, and perhaps in some dark corner of my mind, the entity itself realized the terrible truth. The exorcism hadn't failed, it had been a trap, and I had just been caught. The weight of those words, that empty and black stare, that voice that seemed to come from within my own head, hit me like lightning. It wasn't just the horror of what I saw, but the recognition, a dark resonance with something I had fought to forget. The past which I had tried so hard to bury under piles of paperwork, under the bureaucratic routine and the security of an office, had returned. And it was calling me, dragging me back to the darkness I thought I had left behind. I watched it 3 times. 3 times, every second of the 17, trying to flaw a logical explanation, anything that could disprove what my eyes and ears were witnessing. It was impossible. How could a girl I had never seen in my life, thousands of miles away, talk about a case that had been the end of my field career? If you haven't watched this story I'm talking about, I'll leave the link in the description of this video, and you'll understand what I went through. I didn't know what to say or do. I sat mute, paralyzed, my mind a whirlpool of memories and terror. Victor was speaking on the phone, his voice a distant, unintelligible buzz I simply couldn't hear. His words were lost in the chorus of voices still echoing in my mind, the same voices that had come from Emily's lips. The call dropped, but I didn't even realize. Minutes later, Victor called back, but I took time to return. My body was there in the chair, but my mind had been catapulted back to the hell of 9 months undercover, to the whispers, the shadows, the constant fear that reality would dissolve around me. All of it, all the trauma I had pushed to the back of my consciousness, came rushing back in seconds, with the force of a tsunami drowning me in a fear I thought I'd overcome. The house, Emily, the priest, everything connected to a nightmare I never imagined I would relive. This made no sense at all. The entity I had faced, which had devastated the convent and consumed so many lives, had vanished. I confirmed it with my own eyes. I saw the destruction, but not the presence. Emily had never been among the prisoners at the convent. I was absolutely sure of that. I knew every face, every story of those women. So how did she know who I was? Who was that girl? And who was the damned devil that had taken possession of her, now calling me by name, dragging me back to the abyss? After what felt like an eternity that lasted only a few minutes, I managed to drag my mind back to reality. The phone was vibrating incessantly in my hand, and I finally picked up Victor's call, who had already tried over 10 times, his voice overflowing with an urgency I could barely process. "Rowe, are you okay? Why didn't you answer the phone?" His concern was palpable but muffled by the cacophony in my head. "I'm sorry," my voice came out hoarse, almost a broken whisper. I don't understand. I don't know what to say now. Do you believe me?" The question slipped out, laden with years of frustration and the bitterness of being discredited. "I never doubted you, Alina," Victor replied, his voice softer but still tense. "But you also didn't make an effort to defend me, did you?" Resentment bubbled up, an old wound reopening with the force of the revelation. A heavy sigh came from the other end of the line. "Alina, I'm sorry. I was hands tied. From the heart, I'm sorry." "I understand, Victor. Career always comes first." The irony dripped from each word, but I didn't have the energy to prolong the discussion. "But anyway, what's done is done. What do you want from me, Victor? A demon calls my name in a video, and you want me to do what? Go talk to him?" The question was loaded with bitter sarcasm, a desperate attempt to mask the fear consuming me. "That's right." His answer was immediate without hesitation, and Victor's tone sent a chill down my spine. "Are you crazy, Victor? You know very well where I am right now. I can't just grab my bag and say, 'Bye, boss.' I'm off to Tennessee to find a demon that possessed a girl and wants to talk to me. Be right back. Spare me your madness, Victor. I've had enough of mine." I laughed, a humorless laugh, on the brink of hysteria. The idea was absurd, impossible. "Actually, Alina, that's exactly what you're going to do. The boss has already called your boss. Your departure has been approved. Go straight to Washington Dulles International Airport. The plane is waiting for you." The air seemed to thin. The boss Victor was referring to was the director of the FBI, a figure of immense power whose orders came from a level that rarely got involved in field operations so directly. Above him, in the chain of command of the Justice Department, would be only the Attorney General, and ultimately, the President. The mention that he had already spoken with my boss meant there was no discussion, no refusal. My life, which I painstakingly rebuilt, was about to be dismantled again, and I would be thrown back into the hell I thought I had escaped. The demon had called me, and the FBI was delivering me to him. I hung up the phone, and for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, I sat paralyzed in my chair, staring at the cell phone on my desk. 20 minutes passed, but the room around me seemed to vanish, reduced to an indistinct blur as I lost myself in thoughts that weighed like anchors. The echoes of Victor's words still resonated in my mind, a shadow threatening to swallow my peace. The faces of the women I couldn't save, the whispers of those I left behind, all emerged again, like a tumultuous wave that could not be contained. It was then that suddenly the door opened, and my boss, Walter, entered as if he had arrived from a distant planet. "You must be really good at what you do," he remarked, his voice slightly grave. "After all, the director personally called me to get you cleared." I felt my heart race, and a jolt made me jump up from my chair. The sensation, similar to the fear of coming face to face with the devil itself, nearly made me falter. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you." He maintained a friendly tone, but there was a pressure in his gaze, as if he wanted to sift through the truth behind my state. "It's fine, Walter." "I was distracted," I replied, trying to regain my composure, though the words came out more bitter than intended. He approached, hands in his pockets, watching me with an intense, probing look. "What's going on, Alina? Why do they want you urgently in Tennessee?" The chief didn't give me details and forbade me from asking. Walter's observation cut through my train of thoughts and brought a slight involuntary smile to my face. It was the same situation I had lived when I was pushed to that table. He continued with a slight tone of sarcasm. "Impressive, isn't it? Either you're truly exceptional or you have someone powerful protecting you." The word protected resonated, laden with insinuations. It seemed to suggest that I had an intimate connection with someone influential, implying that my merit was less relevant than my relationship with powerful people. I decided to respond seriously, willing to break this distorted image. "Look, Walter, let me explain something." My voice came out firm, but emotion flooded every syllable. I didn't graduate top of my class at Quantico to sit behind a desk, analyzing spreadsheets and participating in endless budget meetings. Am I happy? Of course not. The salary is great, the perks are wonderful, and I'm finally getting free time. But I wasn't trained for this. I looked at him, trying to gauge if he understood the depth of my frustration. I was trained to go into the field, to hunt down the worst kind of beings that inhabit this earth, I continued, my anger mingling with a barely concealed despair. I never imagined I would face what I faced months ago. And honestly, I didn't expect to have to go back to this. The heavy truth of my words hung in the air between us, and a brief silence settled as the ghosts of the past began to echo. The tension in the room became palpable, and I realized that Walter, for all his attempts to maintain a facade of nonchalance, couldn't hide the unease forming in his gaze. After a brief sigh, he shook his head, a gesture almost of compassion. "I know you're strong, Alina, but please take care of yourself." That reminder sounded like a distant bell, calling my attention to the fact that the journey ahead was far darker and more dangerous than any report or meeting could capture. With my mind boiling, I realized that my return to the field would not just be a call to the past, but an imminent struggle against demons much more real than I could imagine. Walter was about to leave when, suddenly, he hesitated at the door and turned, his expression carrying a determination I didn't expect. "What if I went with you?" he said, his voice firm but laced with underlying concern. "What?" The question escaped my lips, surprised by the unexpected proposal. "What if I go with you?" He repeated, this time with conviction sounding stronger. I stepped back, my mind spinning in turmoil. "You couldn't do this for me. I can't ask you to do that, and trust me, you shouldn't go. It's dangerous." And I tried to find the words, but the truth hung in the air, a weight that was becoming hard to bear. "You're not asking, Alina. I'm saying I'm going with you. And is it dangerous for me, not for you?" The insistence in his voice made my heart race, a mix of apprehension and gratitude. "It's dangerous for anyone, but you don't have to go through this. There's no need, and I know how to take care of myself." Frustration slipped into my voice, a futile attempt to protect him. He hesitated for a brief moment, contemplating the tension between us before deciding. "Okay, then I'll go with you. Meet me in an hour in the lobby of the building." His words were decisive, and there was no room for argument. Walter left, closing the door softly, as if it were a symbol of what was about to unfold. "Great. Just what I need now," I murmured to myself, feeling the additional weight of the situation settle onto my shoulders. As if what I was about to face wasn't enough, now I had an audience. The fact that Walter decided to accompany me left me uneasy. He had no idea what was about to hit me, a storm of horrors that could threaten not only his life, but consume everything around him. The thought of him being there, witnessing it all, added a layer of pressure I didn't want. I cast a glance out the window, observing the city outside as if I could seek an answer on the horizon. Would I really be able to face the demons of my past with Walter by my side? The uncertainty rooted itself in me like weeds, but a part of me knew I couldn't push him away. He was determined, and somehow that might be an advantage. The strength he brought could help me face what lay ahead, even if the idea also terrified me. I took a deep breath, trying to align my thoughts. Time was running out, and I needed to prepare for myself and for him. I knew the journey ahead wouldn't just be a work mission. It would be a battle for survival, and every step would count. I took a quick shower, the hot water helping to dissipate the tension that had built up in my body. I dressed in a new suit, trying to find some confidence in that formal aesthetic that always felt like armor. I grabbed my gun and checked to make sure it was loaded. Though I knew that in the face of demons, it would be the most symbolic utility in the world. Upon arriving at the lobby, the SUV was already waiting. The door opened, and Walter was on the phone in the back seat, gesticulating with intensity. I got in, closed the door, and in an instant, the car sped off. The advantage of being with the boss was that all bureaucracy was forcibly stripped away. There was no time for formalities when urgency took over. In just 40 minutes, we stopped at the foot of the plane on a private runway. The flight, which lasted about an hour and 40, was tense. Every minute seemed to stretch infinitely as I tried to mentally prepare for what was to come. As soon as we landed, a helicopter was waiting for us, and we quickly boarded. The engines roared, and after another 20 minutes of flight, we descended onto a field nearby. The sight of the flashing lights of police sirens in the distance added even more weight to my shoulders. The circus was setting up, and it wasn't small. As soon as we exited the car, a police officer approached, his expression full of concern. "Are you Alina Rowe?" "I'm Sheriff John Shepard." "Yes, sir," I responded, showing my credentials. "Thank God you're here. It's chaos here." "Come with me," he said, pushing through reporters, curious onlookers, and police, his urgency clear in every move. He lifted the yellow tape, and I, followed by Walter, who had been silent since we left Washington, trailed behind him. Once we distanced ourselves from the mess and found a bit more isolation, I grabbed the officer's arm. "Update me." The man was pale, sweat running down his forehead. "Look, Agent Rowe, I've never seen anything like this in nearly 30 years of my career. What's inside is not human. What she did to the priest. I can't explain." Panic was evident on his face, and that terrified look reminded me of what I had witnessed at the convent, the same impotence in the face of horror. "I don't know what it wants with you or what you can do against such a thing," he said, scanning me from head to toe as if my 5'5" height wouldn't be sufficient to face what was to come. "I don't know either, Sheriff, but I was sent here, and here I am. This is my boss, Walter Anderson." I introduced him, urgency creeping into my tone. "Nice to meet you," the sheriff said, shaking Walter's hand. "The pleasure is mine, Sheriff," Walter responded, but his voice betrayed implicit unease.
"What will we do now?"
Walter asked, his words imbued with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "I can only go so far." "Now it's up to you," declared the sheriff, tension emanating from his posture. "You stay here." "I'll go alone," I said, determined.
"You're crazy."
"I'm going with you," Walter insisted, his tone firm, but concern growing in his eyes. "No, you're not. And I'm not asking." The assertiveness in my tone silenced any argument. "Are you forgetting about hierarchy, Alina?" He retorted, a challenge implicit in his words. "No, I'm not, Walter. It's just that if you want to sleep soundly next to your wife for the rest of your days, I wouldn't go into that house." "Trust me?" The last whisper carried a weight of truth that sliced through the air between us. The nervousness in his expression didn't lessen, but I could see the internal struggle he faced. He wanted to help me. He wanted to protect me. But above all, he needed to understand that my decision was a matter of necessity. And when it comes to facing the unknown, oftentimes the safest plan isn't the best. Stay, Walter. I know how to take care of myself.
"Okay, But if you need me, shout, and I'll come in right after. Trust me, Walter, shouting won't make a difference.
You're no match for what I imagine is inside. I turned, determined, and stepped inside. As soon as I crossed the threshold, a terrible smell filled the air, an unbearable stench that mixed rot with burnt. I couldn't exactly describe what it was, or rather I preferred not to get into details you'd be disgusted. I started moving cautiously. The lower part of the house was a complete mess, water-pooled. Ash scattered like silent witnesses to destruction, something red that could be blood. My heart raced, and each breath became a conscious effort. I climbed the stairs, each step taking me deeper into a nightmare. The situation seemed to worsen with every move, and a silent lament of regret formed in my mind. I reached the upper floor where the air was heavy with an almost tangible oppression. The first room was the epicenter of horror scene that defied any sanity. As I walked through the door and saw the priest embedded in the wall, my knees buckled under the weight of the image. The sight of Jennifer split in half at the convent seemed almost innocuous compared to that grotesque work of horror. The priest's head was in an impossible position, his smile stretching as if he were born from the wall itself, a grotesque abomination. A scream caught in my throat nearly escaped me. But before I could vomit, a feminine voice called me from the next room.
Agent Rowe, here, please.
The calmness of that voice, sweet and serene, stood in stark contrast to the horror I was witnessing. It was a call that seemed to emanate from a distant and safe place. I slowly opened the door and stepped in. And there she was, Emily Marrow. At least, what was left of her body. The room, in contrast to the chaos of the rest of the house, was relatively tidy. There was no water, no fire, no blood, only a heavy silence lingering. The contrast intrigued and terrified me at the same time. Emily lay on an unmade bed, a peaceful expression on her face that seemed absurd after everything I had seen. Her eyes were half closed, as if she had retreated into a deep sleep. Something inside me pulsed between hope and despair. Was she really alive? What had really happened there? I advanced cautiously, unsure of what to expect. A part of me yearned for answers, while the other tried to ignore the growing repulsion within. "Emily?" I called, my voice trembling, fearing the answer I might receive. Like in a distant dream, Emily's image began to move slowly, and the world around me seemed to spin around that figure. My mind struggled to make sense of the chaos, but everything that was tangible and clear was shattering before me. And in that moment, a fundamental question resonated. Was I truly ready to face what was to come? I regretted having watched The Exorcist one day. And there she was, Emily, sitting on the edge of the bed with a serene, almost angelic expression that didn't fit the horror around me. But in the blink of an eye, the scene changed drastically. Her voice transformed, her eyes black as abysses fixed on me, and a chair slid over to my side, as if drawn by an invisible force. It all happened so quickly that I couldn't even blink. "So you're Sister Lucia, or if you prefer, Agent Alina Rowe. A pleasure." Her voice was now guttural, a deafening contrast to the softness that had preceded it. The serenity shattered, replaced by a palpable oppression. "Sit down, we have much to discuss." "Yes, it's me," I replied, sitting down automatically, almost instinctively, as my legs felt shaky and barely able to support my weight. "Who are you?" I asked, forcing my voice not to tremble. "Are you the entity from the convent?" Emily let out a laugh, a mix of disdain and amusement. "No, I'm not. That was just my dog having fun. I am, how can I explain? I am the center, the opposition, the power, the control." A chill ran down my spine upon hearing her saturated words of power. I looked serious, a part of me questioning whether all this was really happening. "I thought you were going to say you were Lucifer, Beelzebub, or any other name humans tend to use." Emily's laugh now had a sarcastic and disdainful tone. "Those are names you give to us, but no, I am neither." Her voice resonated with a confidence that felt inhuman. I gulped, the pieces of the puzzle starting to connect in a distorted way. There was an intricate truth here, something I wasn't ready to unravel. Her presence or its emanated an aura of inevitability and power. "So, if you're not what people think, what are you really?" I managed to question, adrenaline pounding in my veins. The entity smiled. but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the expression of someone who knew more than they were willing to share, a smile promising answers that could shatter everything I believed. I am what you fear and what you desire. I am the shadow you ignore, the truth you hide. And I'm here to talk because you have a role to play. The atmosphere felt thick, as if the air was charged with electricity. I sensed that time was running out, and I needed the truth, no matter how painful it might be. And what is that role? I asked, my heart racing with a mix of fear and curiosity. Her response would change everything, and I knew that there would be no turning back. Emily's body rose slowly, as if invisible puppet strings were pulling her upward. She began spinning in circles around me, and for a moment, complete paralysis seized me. I couldn't move. You know, Agent Rowe, you did excellent work at the convent. I was impressed. But what truly baffled me was your ability to control a force 1,000 times superior to yours. Never in thousands of years has anyone possessed such power. I checked your past lives, and you were never anyone who had faced me at any point in history. This fact makes you even more special. I'd like you to tell me how you dominated my dog, and more importantly, how you accessed his mind, controlling him. Can you tell me about that? You caused this entire hell in an honest family's life. Killed a priest just to ask me this? Please, spare me. You could have come to my office and saved me the trouble. The anger made me lose my composure, but I knew I needed to stay focused. Emily laughed, a sound that echoed sarcastically. No, I couldn't. There are rules. I thought you were the control, the power, the means. Isn't that how you introduced yourself? Yes, I am all of that, but there are all limits even for me. You see, what you see here isn't what it seems. This isn't a model family, standard American, as you like to say. Her voice carried a sickening satisfaction. This place is hell itself. The real demons are out there, and their names are Marcus and Claire Marrow. You see, the father abuses his own daughter. The mother turns a blind eye while she's screwing the personal trainer. Nobody cares about this girl. She does drugs, drinks, sleeps with anyone on the street. This family is chaos, but they look like a margarine commercial. And don't blame the demon, because here, my friend, everyone chose their own paths and left their doors open for me. Emily was about to commit suicide last night, and that's when I entered. I don't believe anything you're saying. The statement sounded weak even to me, a mask over my own terror. That's not my problem, is it, Agent Rowe? I don't give a damn what you believe, but let's get back to it. Tell me how you dominated my dog and how you entered his mind. The same way he did to me, using weakness, sex, pleasure. What is weakness for humans should be for demons, and apparently, I was right. The pride was evident in my voice, though a chill ran through my body. Fantastic and perceptive of you. But believe me, he wasn't supposed to have that weakness. We, on this side, don't let ourselves be carried away by pleasures like you mere mortals. The arrogance in the entity's voice cut like a knife, draining the remaining hope I was trying to maintain. Hearing his words, a revolt grew inside me, but I knew I needed to be cautious. The game wasn't just about confronting him. It was a test of endurance, truth, and courage. What was at stake was much bigger than I could comprehend. If you're not one of those you claim, I tried to argue tense, then why this house? Why these horrors? What do you really want? His answer could change not only the course of the conversation, but perhaps the entire fate of those lives, and even my own future. I want you to free me, said the guttural voice, loaded with urgency. You what? I asked, confused, a mix of disbelief and despair. Free me. You have a gift never before seen. Only you can free me. Have you lost your mind or what? And how would I do that? You'd walk around the streets freely? The tone of irony in my voice was an attempt to deflect the tension hanging between us. Almost that. You have a gift, Agent Rowe. A gift to enter demons' minds. And you need to free me so I can fulfill my role. And what's your role besides tormenting and generating chaos? Curiosity mixed with distrust. To punish those who don't follow the paths of light. Those words caught me by surprise. I didn't expect such a clear and direct statement. What do you mean, don't follow the paths of light? I inquired, seeking to understand what was going through that being's mind.
Exactly what you heard.
Punish those who don't follow the paths of light. Wait, let me see if I got this straight. You want to punish sinners? Is that it? But don't you already do that for fuck's sake? No, my disbelief was evident. No, I punish demons who are lost on these lands and are manipulated by humans. Like this family, like the nuns at the convent. The revelation left me paralyzed. But I'm imprisoned by powerful people who use me to do evil. It's those people I want to punish. The powerful of this planet. I can't do that. I mean, I don't know what to do, and actually, I don't want to know. The weakness in my voice was an echo of the confusion dominating my mind. Don't you want a better world, Agent Rowe? The question was challenging, almost provocative. Of course I do. And that includes not having demons like you running around. The intensity of my response was a mix of determination and contempt. There was palpable tension in the air, as if the words exchanged between us were cracks in very thin ice. The idea of releasing that wandering force seemed absurd, but the seed of doubt was beginning to germinate in my mind. Could there be truth in his words? What would it really mean to free him? Think carefully, Alina. Do you really think the ground beneath your feet is safe? Her voice now had a subtle tone of persuasion. Look around. Chaos is generated by those who don't know how to control the shadows dwelling within themselves. I hesitated, images of lost and destroyed lives growing in my mind. Fear of the unknown began mixing with disturbing curiosity.
You might have a point.
But that doesn't change the fact that I don't trust you. Trust is a luxury we can afford, but in the end, it's truth that saves us, said the entity, its tone now gentler. I stared at Emily, or what was left of her, and realized the line between good and evil, between light and shadows, was more blurred than I'd like to believe. You see, Agent Rowe, the powerful of this planet control everything. Social media, churches, banks, pharmaceutical industries. The people suffer, the people agonize, and all the blame is thrown on my back. But the real evildoers are free, dominating what you call the matrix. All right, now you've become a saint, the savior of Earth. My tone was sarcastic, a defense against the growing sense of vulnerability oppressing me. Emily stared at me. This time, I felt something deeper than fear. There was an intense rage in her gaze, a storm about to explode. Listen here, you bitch, she screamed, her voice resonating like thunder. I called you here out of respect for what you did, and away because I admire your work. But I won't be humiliated by someone as mediocre as you. As Emily spoke, pressure began accumulating around my neck. Air was slowly escaping, and my body began lifting from the chair, as if an invisible force was pulling me upward. Terror intertwined with anger, making my heart race. I should have stayed quiet, but the determination not to let myself be shaken by that entity pushed me forward. Maybe if I died, I'd free myself from this hell once and for all. The idea began to seem seductive, like an escape to a place where horror couldn't follow me. And in that instant, between the pressure on my neck and the frantic pulsing of my heart, a cold truth settled inside me. I was in a much bigger game than I'd imagined, wrapped in a macabre dance between power and submission. You have no power over me, I shouted, forcing the words out, each syllable an affirmation of resistance. The air was thin, and in the fight for my life, I realized the battle wasn't just against her, but against all the shadows surrounding me. And I was about to discover how far I'd go to fight for freedom. My head slammed brutally against the ceiling, and the loss of strength made me faint. The impact was deafening, and everything went dark. Several minutes passed before I woke up fallen on the floor, reality still confused. I opened my eyes, trying to convince myself it was just a nightmare, but the truth was undeniable. There she was, Emily, sitting on the edge of the bed, just as she was before. Never defy me or belittle my words again, Agent Rowe. You have no notion of my power. Look at that window. What do you see? Nothing. It's dark. My voice was choked, confusion still dominating me. Can you see the top of that distant mountain? Yes. With difficulty, but yes. Pay close attention to it. I followed her command, concentrating. The moment I looked more firmly, a fire began rising, and suddenly the entire mountain was in flames, illuminating the darkness around us. Do you still doubt me, Agent Rowe? The arrogance in her voice was palpable.
I never doubted you, you demon.
I just don't agree with your good guy version.
That's all.
Well then, will you help me or not? Because there are thousands of Emilys for me to scourge while I could be attacking the powerful. I have a question, I responded, seeking any way to buy time.
What? You're all powerful, but you have limits, correct?
Yes. If you're in prison somehow, it's because you're within this limit imposed by someone superior to you. Am I wrong? No. Then why, instead of coming to me, didn't you go directly to that person or that being? But I'll answer, because you can't be freed, that's why. Or you already tried and were denied.
That's it.
And when you noticed my power, you saw a loophole that might work or not.
You'd have to test it.
If it went wrong, you'd remain the same. But if it worked, you could reach unimaginable power, something not allowed. Bingo, and you can't kill me because you don't have permission. Because I'm not a sinner, and somehow I earned some points with someone when I saved 89 women and closed hundreds of other cases. Besides, if you kill me, you'd never know if you could free yourself. I'm your only and lost hope at the moment. The silence following my revelation was tense until Emily finally decided to act. Look at that, I almost got manipulated by you. I'm sorry, Lord Power, Lord Center, or whatever, but I can't help you. The affront seemed to trigger a mechanism within her. Emily's body was thrown in all directions as if possessed by a tempestuous force. Wings began swirling out of nowhere. Windows were hurled into the distance, and black water and blood began sprouting from the walls. Demons upon demons flew around me, their grotesque presence threatening every fiber of my being. But inexplicably, they didn't touch me. The truth began to crystallize. I was right all along. He couldn't do anything against me. I was a hope, not a threat, and that gave me a power I barely understood. The fight was just beginning, and I needed to decide between submitting or fighting with all my strength. The choice would be mine, and the consequences undeniable. The chaos finally ceased, and when Emily looked at me again, the tension in the air was almost palpable. Is the show over? I asked, trying to maintain a brave tone, but feeling my heart still racing. I'm just getting started, she responded, her voice now a mix of provocation and power. Look, why don't you stop with this bullshit? I can't and won't help you. Unfortunately, I can't. My determination was diminishing, but I didn't want to give in. I'll release the 165 souls of the women who died at the convent. It's not for me to decide that. Do what you want? My eyes swept the room, seeking an exit as I stood up, determined to leave. Those walls seemed to close in around me. The circus needed to end. When I approached the door, it slammed shut. I jumped and turned around, my heart racing. How dare you turn your back on me, you bitch? The fury in her voice echoed, resonating within me like a bell. Listen here, you cheap demon. Kill me already if that's what you want. Or let me go. My bravery was a last effort, but inside me fear was beginning to creep in.
You're very brave, Agent Rowe.
I am, and you're one hell of a liar. I confess that's one of my qualities. A crooked smile sprouted on her face. Let's do this. Free this girl, I'll take care of her parents. You go on tormenting others and I go back to my spreadsheets. Is that the ridiculous life you want for your future, Agent Rowe? Emily's tone was now mixed with a trace of contempt. What if we joined forces? She said. That's all I needed, I replied, feeling the weight of the proposal, sitting back down in the chair, disbelief stamped on my face. Then came the boldest proposal. What if I help you catch some big shots? Would you hand them over to me so I could have my personal revenge?
You'd gain status, power, more fame.
And I could give you that pleasure you felt at the convent, the one you can't find in any man anymore? A wave of disgust invaded me as I realized he was using the same weapon against me. Sex, weakness, pleasure. I confess I was tempted, but who wouldn't be? After all, sex, guns, and pistachio ice cream were my weaknesses, but I already imagined something like this would come from such a low being. Equals, forget it, Lord Almighty.
I won't fall for your tricks anymore.
But I can help you with the big shots. How do you want to do this? I'll give you everything I have against them. You start the investigations, and when they're convicted and imprisoned, I can act. What do you think? We can work out the details in the future. If you stay within safe lines, I can think about it. I stood up, determination beginning to form again. Can I leave now? Will you free Emily? I promise to take care of her parents. I hate abusers of women. She won't have a very good future if she survives, Agent Rowe, especially without her parents. Are you sure you want her to live? I can finish this right here and free you from this problem. It's not for me to decide about life or death. Leave her. If she survives, it's God's will, I said.
Do you really believe in that, Agent Rowe?
I believe in someone powerful more than you, Mr. Demon. May his will be done. You're very perceptive, Agent Rowe. I understand now how you dominated my dog and got so far in your career in such a short time.
Thank you, sir. Can I go now?
I asked, somewhat impatiently. Yes, you can. But first, just one more little thing. What now? I asked, already at the limit of my patience. Help me and maybe I'll help you with an old case of yours. And which would that be? Miranda Foster. The mention of that name froze me. How did he know that name? How do you know this name?
Where is she? Is she alive?
Calm down, Agent Rowe. Let's take it easy. Help me and maybe one day we can talk about this again. Until soon, Agent Rowe. The lights went out and chaos took over the environment again. 2 minutes later, everything was silent. Emily was sprawled on the bed. I checked her pulse. She was alive with several abrasions, but no fractures. I left the room and looking around, found the priest's body fallen on the floor. Unfortunately, he hadn't survived. I went down the stairs and upon leaving, day was breaking. The soft sunlight beginning to dispel the night shadows, like an artist revealing a new canvas. The entire circus was set up. The scene looked like a vivid nightmare, where reality and farce intertwined. However, the real show was about to begin. Dozens of voices called my name in a deafening chorus. The agitation was palpable. The pressure of cameras and microphones surrounded me, as if they were predators looking for the weakest prey. The rain of questions mixed with the crowd's uproar. Each reporter anxious for a story. Each police officer ready to intervene, creating chaos that seemed an echo of the previous night. Walter ran up to me, his expression marked by deep concern, as if the entire night had weighed on his shoulders. My clothes were torn and dirty, covered in blood and soot, a grotesque representation of the experiences that had almost defeated me. It was as if each stain told a story of struggle and survival, and in that moment, I knew I was about to be exposed to a world that had no idea what had really occurred in the shadows. The electric energy of dawn mixed with the adrenaline still pulsing in my veins, and I realized that, although I was surrounded by people, I was more alone than ever. The battle was far from over, and the real fight now would be against what the day would bring. Are you okay? Yes. My voice came out low and tired, as if an immense weight had settled on my shoulders. And the girl? She's alive. The priest, unfortunately, didn't make it. Victor looked at me, the expression of relief mixing with the pain of the reality we were facing. The world seemed to be in constant motion, but for me, a new cycle of challenges is drawing ahead, and I was about to be pulled back into the center of the storm. The paramedics ran into the house in a frenzy that seemed an echo of the chaos of what had just happened. With sirens echoing in the background, I was taken to an ambulance, the blinding light of headlights mixing with the faint glow of dawn. Adrenaline still pulsed in my veins, and the demon's words hammered incessantly in my mind. While they examined me, I told Victor what I'd heard, disguising everything as if Emily herself had been speaking. The blood on my face was cleaned, but the nightmare of the previous night wouldn't erase. At one point, I saw Marcus Marrow being handcuffed, his eyes full of impotent fury, while Emily's mother began screaming, a mixture of desperation and confusion, and was quickly subdued by officers. The neighbors, incredulous, watched the scene as if they were spectators of a grotesque spectacle, their expressions varying between curiosity and horror. Then, Sheriff John Shepard approached. There was something in his smile that seemed out of place, an almost morbid satisfaction. "Very good. Agent Rowe, congratulations." His voice had a tone that left me intrigued, almost uneasy. "Thank you, Sheriff." He took 2 steps forward, placing his right hand on my shoulder. The pressure of that hand was comfortable and, at the same time, threatening. "We'll see each other soon, Agent Rowe. Miranda Foster awaits you. Do your part." "See you." I watched him walk away, frozen, a cutting cold going from the tip of my toes to my skull. How? What did that mean? The answers seemed to dance before me, but every time I tried to reach them, they escaped. "Are you okay, Alina?" Walter asked, his voice carrying genuine concern. "Yes," I lied, though the truth was stuck in my throat, heavy as a cement block. "You're white. Looks like you saw a ghost." I looked right at him, navigating through memories, through the horrors that had become part of me.
"I saw more than a ghost, Victor.
I saw a demon. 8 months passed, and my life seemed a paradox in itself. I'd been promoted again, and my career was taking off. I started giving lectures at FBI units about exorcism cases, satanic cults, and all the crudeness hiding behind faith. Walter was no longer my boss. Now we held equivalent positions, but there was a significant difference. I now reported directly to the top boss. With over 100 agents under my control, we handled strange cases, and my reputation as Agent Scully and Clarice Starling had broken boundaries within the Bureau. At the end of the day, arriving at my office in Boston, Julie, my assistant, greeted me, visibly excited. "They left a package here for you, Chief." "Really? Who?" "I don't know. A guy from DHL. I already tested it. It's not a bomb," she said, laughing. "Okay, let's see if it really isn't." I laughed too, but unease began growing inside me. Opening the package, my eyes encountered 4 thick folders. Thousands of pages, photos, and maps spread across my desk. As I leafed through it all, my stomach churned. These weren't just documents. They were echoes of destroyed lives, cases of kidnapping, pedophilia, human trafficking, drugs, homicides.
All absolutely unacceptable.
But the last folder left me breathless. Images of high-ranking church officials, and, among them, the photo of a man I never imagined seeing in a criminal file, Congressman Foster, father of Miranda Foster, missing for over 3 years. The man whose influence had managed to open an operation to locate his daughter, supposedly kidnapped. The same man who blamed me for the convent operation's failure for not finding his daughter. His desperate search was now exposed. He wasn't looking for his daughter. He was hunting her. Miranda hadn't been kidnapped. She'd fled from her own father. And Sister Lucia knew something and was thrown to the lions at the convent. But what they didn't imagine was that I would go in her place, much less that I would survive. And even more unlikely, that I would ally with a vengeful demon. Leaning over the folders, I found a note underneath them. A yellowed paper written in blood red. "Have fun, Director Rowe. The witch hunt has begun. We'll talk soon." 3 small drops formed a triangle, and a larger one dripped in the middle, like a promise that the real horror was just beginning. Desperate and determined, I knew the game had changed. I was no longer just an agent. Now, I was a player on a board where good and evil blurred, and the only thing left to do was play my cards, even if they were all stained with blood. Thank you for joining us on this dark and intense journey. The shocking twists and revealed secrets remind us that, often, truth is stranger than fiction. As we reflect on what happened to Agent Rowe, some questions arise. What would you do if you were in her place? Could you trust anyone again after such betrayals? How do you interpret the relationship between power and corruption in the institutions that should protect us? What measures do you believe can be taken to bring to light the dark secrets surrounding us? Do you want more episodes with Alina Rowe? I invite all of you to share your opinions and theories about this story on social media or in our comments. Let's continue this discussion and explore the complexities of what it means to fight against the forces of evil, whether human or supernatural. I thank each of you for being here and for listening to this narrative. It's because of your support that we continue to explore and narrate stories that provoke, challenge, and inspire us. Don't forget to subscribe, leave your feedback, and stay tuned for the next stories we'll bring. Until next time.